Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's live demo. I'm doing this is for Saturday night. I have nothing better to do but to work on a painting, and I am doing this painting of Ellie Luna. She is from I got her image off of the app Sketchy. That's where I get most of my resource images, and I I'm going to go ahead and start. I don't see that anyone's here yet, but that's okay. Um, this is mostly for those people who are going to play this back later. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. I have to redraw this. This actually was not a drawing of Ellie. This is a painting that I'd started, but then I realized I had the wrong size panel, so I'm just going to have to ignore the first drawing lines that are in there. It's actually going to take me a little bit longer because of that, because I have to work around those lines. Okay, there's a couple of you on here. Okay, that measurement looks good. And that her brow ridge is a little bit lower than I initially guessed. So as soon as I can wipe out some of those other lines that are there, it'll be helpful to see what it is that I'm doing. Okay, I'm just going to write a quick note. Hello and welcome. Please let me know where you are watching from. Okay. So, so this is the type of panel that I'm using. These are gessoed hardwood. The brand that I'm using is Speedball. Um, they make these Mona Lisa panels. They are the they're gessoed, but the finish is very slick. In fact, I highly recommend re-gessoing them. That's what I do before I paint on them. I did do one painting um, on them without gessoing it first, and I was getting a hard time getting the oil paint to stick to the surface. Every time I went to paint, the paintbrush would pick up the paint that I had already put down. And at some point, I just got so frustrated, I stopped and I thought, hey, maybe I can just wipe some of this paint off the panel and use it again for something else. And the amazing thing was that when I went to wipe off the paint, it wiped off right back to the white surface. That's how slick it was, that the paint, none of the paint actually adhered to the surface. Like if I tried to wipe this off right now, I would just be kind of rubbing it in more, as opposed to being able to wipe it off completely. So I think I need to put down a little bit of her of the mid-tone here in her face, just so that I can get rid of some of the lines that I have here from this previous painting, so that I can see much better what I'm doing. It's almost going in like it's pretty gray. I will come in with some rosier tones for her cheeks at some point. Actually, I'm putting a little of red in the color now. And it may be a little bit too dark, but I don't think so. That looks actually like close to the right value. And okay, so that's going to help me see a little bit better where I am. I didn't really measure this eye that I'm painting right here, her right eye. I should do that before I get too far along, so I know where I am. I have a nice big brush here, which I'm trying to do more is pick up the biggest brush that I can manage for a particular part of the painting. So that eye is just a touch lower, which is fine, not too far off. Let's see if grab a little bit smaller brush and mix some of the darker color around her eye, the eyelash, whatever. It's going to be something more like that. And I'm going to get this nice greenish blue, very light greenish blue in her eyes. That's sort of one of the nice features of this photo of her, is the eye color in relationship to her flesh tones. Okay. And we have hi, someone writing in from Palm Beach, Florida. Welcome to this live demo on your Saturday night, whose name is some random politically correct name. Okay. I don't know if that's the name or just the name that's being displayed, but cute. Okay. Who knows? Maybe it's the president writing in to watch my demo from the from his West Palm Beach home. Who knows? Anyway, I'm going to measure this again. You can't measure these things enough because I'm often finding that I measure it and then I put it in and then it's not where I thought it would end up. So that looks pretty good. Okay. And as long as I get the other eye in the place that it's supposed to be, then I think I will have overcome this other drawing that was there. Okay. I'm guessing that Saturday night's probably not the optimal night to do a painting demo, but it just worked out for my schedule, and I will just have another demo on my YouTube channel, which YouTube seems to like. The more videos, the better. They give you little rewards, like they'll show your videos more often the more videos you make. So it's so they got me. They have me on the hamster wheel now of making videos. Those evil people at Google, they know what they're doing. Okay, so I'm mixing up a little bit of color for her hair. It's she has this real interesting mauve-y color that it's dyed, or maybe it's a wig, I don't know. So it's going to be something close to that color in the darkest part of her hair. And let's see if I can get the base of her nose right. It's something that's more up here. And this is done a few other paintings with women with nose rings, and I've actually done a couple paintings of Ellie already. I did one. It it was a shot from below, so it was a real extreme angle. It was not easy to paint, but it came out pretty well. And then another one similar gesture to this one with her hand in the shot. So, but I've done some other paintings with nose rings, and I've gotten a really good response. I think there's a little bit of fascination with nose rings. Not not me personally, but people who see my work on Instagram tend to respond very well to that. And okay, I need to go back to my bigger brush because I I took out the smaller brush just to paint some of the details around the eye, and just, it's a bad habit that I don't then go back to my bigger brush. Right now I'm actually painting in tones that are very close to each other, not really making a big change value wise in the different parts of her face right now. Just trying to just sort of get a base coat of paint, cover over some of those lines that are there right now. But then I can start pushing and pulling value and color around a little bit until I start to get to where it needs to be. Let's see if I can get some of that. Yep, that is totally the wrong color for that spot. Get some of the shadow side of her cheek in just to get a sense of placement and indicate where her finger is going to be in the painting here. Something like that. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. I just need to figure out where I am. Okay. So we have 4 people here. Welcome to the party, the painting party. I did an announcement on Instagram. Just a quick live announcement to say that I was doing this live painting here. I found it's very hard to get people to jump from one platform to another. There's a real resistance to platform shifting. People who are used to being on YouTube just want to stay on YouTube. People who are on Instagram want to spend their social media time on Instagram. So if you say you were giving a live demo on YouTube, they they may want to go over and watch, but I think only a small percentage actually do. And so I think that's kind of an interesting phenomenon. This kind of idea that the platforms are kind of sticky in a way that once someone's on that platform, they don't really want to leave. I suppose it would be the same thing with Facebook. If I made an announcement on Facebook, to get people to come over to YouTube would be really hard. Anyone have an opinion about that? Let me know. I'm kind of curious to hear what other people have to say about moving around from one platform to another. I find it a little odd personally because I'm happy to move around from one platform to the next. I suppose if someone said, come join me on Twitch or Snapchat, I would have a little bit of a hard time because I would have to download those apps and then try to figure out, open up an account and figure out how to navigate around it. But I figure this day and age, most people have been on YouTube and probably have YouTube accounts, even if they don't know what a YouTube channel is. But I think most people do are on YouTube enough to know what it is. In fact, I have, on a trial basis, YouTube Red just for part of this month and the next month. I've been watching some of their shows. Cobra Kai I watched all of, and what was the other one? Impulse, which I thought was interesting. Okay, I'm gonna have to measure these lips because I just never am sure when I start dropping these things in. Early on in the painting, I don't have a sense of where where the anatomy is yet. Um, so doesn't hurt to get a measurement. Sometimes I find that I'm so wildly off, and I wondered how could it even be that far from where I guessed it would be. So that's where measuring really does help. So you can see how much higher I put her lips than what's here. It's probably that her base of her nose um, a little bit higher than, I mean, lower than where I put it. Yep. So the base of her nose is really much closer to being here. Her nostrils, everything's lower. I'm just going to kind of rub out what I did so far and try to get a sense of it again. So that was the nose is then was throwing my lips off. Not my lips, her lips, but you know what I mean. I'm just going to scrub that out. I love how forgiving oil paint is. You can just, put it down and then paint over it something completely different, and it just it all works. Okay, so now the lower lip then comes down much further. Let's get a little bit of white in there. It's not really as dark as I have it. Okay. Okay, so random wrote me just to say, you guys see that too, is that he or she came over from Instagram, but is new to both platforms. Um, but in any case, welcome and thank you for joining. Okay, so I need to indicate where that nostril is again because it's kind of throwing me off a little bit, not seeing where it is. Okay, again, I'm using the smaller brush. Let's correct the direction of this eye a little bit because I have it a little bit of a wrong angle. The corner of it was too high, or basically where the lid would be for eyelid. I'm trying to as I'm painting, I'm trying to imagine it actually as being the forms in her face, even early on, because it's a little bit hard to see at this point, but if I can really um, do a good job of indicating where the forms are turning, then that really does speed things along a little bit. So now I'm starting to get a little bit better feeling of the shape of her eye. There is just a little bit more space out here. And then as her eyelid turns away from the light, and I think the makeup is actually accentuating this, she may have a little bit darker eyeshadow on the corners just to kind of give it a smokier look, but that does play up this idea that the light is reflecting off of the center part of her lid. And I'm just going to indicate that now just so I can get a feeling of it just with some lighter paint. Yeah. And don't have the subtleties of the shape of her eye yet. I just have to keep on carving away until I get it. It's starting to get there. That's going to be a process, but okay. Yeah, that's looking a bit better. Okay, so the eye is starting to look like an eye. Let's see if I can find the corner of her nose here. It's going to be, if I come straight down from the tear duct, I'm out here somewhere. That's about right. So the corner of her nose, of the wing of her nostril here. It's here, comes towards us a little bit, where it's meeting up with the tip of her nose. And then I need to make the tip of her nose come out a bit further. It's going to take white and a little bit of the naphtha red, but mostly white, and a bigger brush. I need a bigger brush. Well, I'm going to go with a medium-sized brush. Okay, I'm going to need more white on my palette soon because I'm using a lot of white here. Okay, I think that's closer. Let's get a little more red. Grayish red, that's sort of around the bottom of her nose. And her nostril does actually come out a little bit further there. And I'm just going to give just little marks where the nose ring is going to go. Something like that. Just need little pieces of landmarks, indications of where some things are. They don't have to be completely fleshed out, so to speak. I just need to know where I am in the whole thing. Okay. So, yeah. So I'm just going to throw in some things, just the edges of her hair, just so I can start to get the shape of her face. Mix up a little bit more of that mauve color for her hair. A little purple, a little pink, a lot of black, some white. Too much black, oops. Okay, so I gotta start over again. Yeah, I went too gray. Okay, let's get... Okay, that's good. I'm only seeing just the corner of her ear there, and I'm going to measure just to make sure. This is a fairly important landmark there, the base of her ear, because that's going to tell you how much the head is tilted in which direction by the relationship of the base of the ear and the top of the ear to her eyes. And so here I have the base of the ear. Say it's almost straight hitting right here, so I think I need to drop it down just a little bit. And a little bit of blue in there, but that's okay. Some of that will just add a little bit of interest. Okay, and I'm not getting the shape of her jaw right. I'm not cutting in fast enough. Really comes in quite dramatically, and then the chin comes pretty sharply over. And I have a little bit of shadow here, and shadow where the fingertip is, and the finger comes in there. And the finger is almost the same color as her face. It's only to some degree, it's only the shadow that's really going to help us see where that finger is. I can exaggerate the color difference just to help it out a little bit, but I may just rely a lot on the silhouette of the finger from the dark hair that's around it. Hair color again. Okay. And I need a little bit of bluish white for her teeth here. Went a little bit too blue, but I just so I get the idea, and just see if I can refine the shape of her lip a little bit so it has the same character, finding that the center point. So if I can see here, there's a center line that's coming down the nose, and then the philtrum comes forward this way, so her lip is coming forward in space towards us a little bit. And then there's this highlight that's right there. And then the shape of her upper lip, we just see it a little bit broader, right towards the center, and then it thins out as it comes out to the sides. Just gets a little bit thinner, and then it almost comes pretty sharp angle downward because her finger is pulling her lip down, and then we have the shadow of the finger there again. Okay, so that's the same, that's the basic. I'm missing some of the dark shadow that's on the lower part of her, the outside of her lip here, and it pulls up a little bit. Okay, so, and then there's a little bit of dark red that's on the inner part of her lower lip. Gotta mix that quickly. And then her lower lip really is much lighter than when I painted it, so I'm just gonna correct that a little bit, come in with a little bit lighter color. It is going to have to be even lighter than that, but I do have these highlights that are in, it's partly because the moistness of her lips right there, so having the lips a little bit darker there doesn't hurt me. It allows that that sort of wetness to stand out a little bit more. And then there is a little bit, I need to give her a little bit more face, for lack of a better term. And there's a lot of blues in there, in the skin tones on the far side of her lips. It's not a really strong, cool blue color, but it's strong enough that I want, when I look at it on the palette, I want it to see that it's leaning bluish, kind of a blue-gray. And it's going to be very close in value to the color of her cheek just above that. There, I can adjust some of the shape of her nose ring there. There really is some very soft value changes in her face. A mistake would be to make those differences too strong. And as I go ahead and make it too strong. Okay. Make sure I get some of the rosiness in her cheeks. And then I need to, there's a little bit of lighter area here. That's light, but there has to be a little bit of shadow from the hollow of her cheek here. And then it faces towards us a little bit more, then it drops back into shadow. So that's all really subtle. I've just painted it a lot stronger than it actually is. So I'm going to have to come back and adjust. And I need to adjust this dark shape that's on the side of her face too. Okay, so far so good. It is, there is a bit of likeness there so far. I'm going to keep on adjusting things as I go. To really make sure that I'm getting both the shape, the dimension of the forms on her face, making sure I getting shadows and highlights and reflected light in the right places so that you really start to read the dimensionality of those forms. What I didn't do at all in her far cheek is right now its reading is fairly flat because I haven't done anything that would help indicate the direction of the forms there. So I'm just going to start to um, play around with the shapes that I see there. There's a little bit of a kind of a ramp that comes off the far side of her nose into her cheek, and it's just slightly darker with a little bit of a, even darker around her eye. It's kind of a swoop there, and that's going to help us see the cheek as being a little bit more than just flat. Eyebrow. Okay, so it is pretty quickly starting to be able to read some of those shapes. I am running out of white, so I'm going to take 30 seconds to get a little more paint on my palette. And while I do that, start to evaluate what I have down so far. That white is going to help me because this painting is going to require a lot of white because there's such a lot of pastel colors, values, very light values in her face. And so I'm going to have to just keep on adding more and more white to the colors to get them light enough. Okay, that's looking good so far. Gonna soften up some of these forms here, or some of these transitions between forms. Sometimes my transitions are basically where you lay down one color that you see in the face or in the painting, and then you lay another color side next to it, and then you don't really, you just sort of have a hard line in between the two, and that's a transition. And in most cases the transition should be much softer. You don't really want to see in some places how the raw brush strokes, so it will take additional brush strokes to sort of intermediate steps, intermediate steps in between those to have a softer transition that's closer to what is in the actual subject's face. It takes a little bit more finesse, but okay. So I made her face a little bit longer than it is, but I need to measure again. So let's see how far. The base of her chin should come down right to about there. Yeah, I'm just off by only a little bit. I just have to do a better job being a little more accurate with the line of her chin there. Just a corner of white coming back into there. That's better. And I don't have her mouth quite white enough either. I think it comes out. If I look at the corner of her nose and the corner of her mouth, it should be an angle comes out to about there. And so, which means I have the drawing off somewhere a little bit. It's okay. Just sometimes little things that are off just in one direction next to another feature that's off in the opposite direction, and that can really throw a lot out of whack. But usually it's just a little distances that things might be off, but it could be too big a distance in and what you need is something a little more accurate in some cases for something to read correctly. I think that's a little bit better, but I think something is still off. Maybe the far side of her mouth doesn't look like I'm getting the right shape yet, or it's starting in the wrong place. Yep, and I'm still missing a little bit of her face here. Yeah, so I'm to the place where I can start looking at the resource image and looking at her face going back and forth quickly, and then I can see fairly quickly where I have placement and shapes that are a little bit off. Okay, need a little bit of orange right here. There's an interesting color in her face. I don't know if that's um, reflection from her eyeshadow and mascara, or if it's actual makeup that has that kind of color on her skin. That's or like an orange foundation or something. Okay, and I have to go lighter on the nose here and go get some of the red color back in. There's some nice, lovely rose tones that, yeah. And then I'm gonna throw in a little bit of the highlight of her nose, of both on the bridge and the tip of her nose, and that's going to help me understand the nature of the surface, where the surface is a little bit shinier than I have it, and I want to see where the light is reflecting back at us. Will help me understand better both the surface quality and where the forms are turning. And there's a little bit of a darker edge on the outside of her nose here. Just going to indicate it. Okay. So this all is looking pretty good in here. I'm missing where her lid comes down, because those values are very close. The eyeshadow here on the outside of her eye, and maybe that's intentional and makes her eyes look bigger. So the point of the makeup is to hide that edge, but I do want to, for my purposes, I want to know where that is. Put a little bit of black to indicate where her eyelashes come out, kind of the mass of her eyelashes. Okay, see if I can get the crease in her eye is not black, it's a dark red. Crease of her eyelid, I should say. And then we do have a highlight here in the corner of her eye. I'll just almost make that pure white for now. If I do this right, if I get soften some of these edges here and get the values right, then I'm really gonna start to feel, I almost want like a photographic quality to it. I don't want it to be photorealism, I just want it to feel real. And so to do that, sometimes I have to really pay attention to the values and the colors that I'm seeing before it starts to do that. Okay, so I can see a transition here. There's a darker, little bit of bluish gray, then it goes to this neutral orange, and then it's right up against this highlight. And what I'm missing is that bluish gray there. To go a little bit lighter than it is, and then it goes much lighter as I get beyond that. So I'm going to come in with some white right here, make that whole area lighter, reshape where that eyebrow is coming in a little bit, really smooth up some of that area there. Okay, that's helping. And I also, that sort of triangle at the above the bridge of the nose, I know there's a name for it. It's like a keystone kind of thing. And that is cutting much sharper here. And then I'm going to put in the shape underneath her eyebrow here. Try to get that color and shape closer to where what it is. Adjusting it a little bit. And I'm totally missing her upper eyelid. It's making her look a little strange there. And where I drew her iris is a little bit off. So kind of pull everything down a little bit. Luckily, oil paint is very forgiving. I mean, the hard part about it is that wet paint tends to mix a little bit with the wet paint, but you can kind of like the finger tool in Photoshop, you can kind of smudge things around and move things around pretty easily. Okay, and I have where her pupil is, I have that off a little bit, and I have it kind of a little bit too colorful. I really want that. She's sort of looking at us a little bit, maybe a little bit to the right of us, but the way I have this eye position right now, it's not quite feeling centered yet. So I'm just gotta play with a little bit with the position of it before I feel like it's looking at us. Get enough white on the. It's amazing how our brain figures out the direction of things. The value of the whites of the eyes is going to tell us a little bit more about the direction of the eye, because we understand that it's a round ball in the head, and if we understand the iris as being kind of centered in that ball, whatever part of that ball that we see, then we understand that the eye is looking at us. If it's at the center. Now, we only see a bit of that ball because it's covered over by, the face, the eyelid. And so we just see a small part. So it's very important to get all those values right so that our brain understands that bit of information. And to help us out here, I'm just going to throw in the indication of the highlight. If I can get it right the first time, I'll be very happy. I may have to adjust that later, but it looks pretty good so far. Okay. May get a little bit of noise here. This is still feeding time for my teenage boy, and I work right off my kitchen. So yep, there's one right there, going to get some late night snacks. And I think he's actually thirsty, so he's getting some ice water. Okay. So I still have to do some adjusting with that eye, but I like the way it's looking. It's feeling like it's looking at me. It's feeling overall like it's pretty close. I need to get some of that orange color that's coming in from her makeup on her lower eyelids. Kind of reddish, rusty color. And then get an indication of where her tear duct is. I'm notorious for just ignoring those kind of details. I'll paint everything, the eyelids, the eyelashes, and then I won't even paint like where that part of the anatomy is. So just totally won't be thinking about it, and I'll look at the painting later after it's all done, and it's just like, I didn't even paint where the tear duct is. Okay, I need to also change the shape where this brow is cutting in a little bit. I have it coming down a little bit too far. And I also see I need to raise the tip of the nose just a little bit. There's a little bit of highlight that's on the cheek just below the nose, so I can use white just to cut a little bit about right. Okay. And knock down some of those transitions a little bit. I'm trying not to do a lot of blending. I'm just trying to knock some of the edges of paint strokes down that are a little bit distracting. But where I want to have clear changes of color and value, I want to come in with some fresh paint to make sure that I'm getting it. And I have, again, some blue color in her face. I think it's hard for people to paint blue into flesh tones. They don't, blues and greens and violets. I think our brain wants to think that everything in the face is a warm color, and that's rarely the case that you'll see a face lit up that will only have warm values in it. Either the shadows are going cooler or there'll be some cool tones. There, a lot of times there's reflection from the sky in the face, and there will be some blues that way, or it'll just be a cool light and a warm shadow. But she has quite a bit of blues and violets in her skin tones. And okay, clean that up a little bit. And that corner, I'm always talking about the corner of her nose. I don't know if that's the right descriptive term for it for people to understand what I'm talking about, but there's a lot of red in that shadow there. It's a little bit of a cast shadow from the light source. It's coming this way, and that nostril, the flare of her nostril, is it's sort of coming out and then swinging back, and that's enough just to create a little bit of space a for a shadow there. And then that shadow gets very thin as it drops down to the base of the nose. And then all these little dark marks I have here are too strong, so I'm just knocking them back. Really, there's a lot of subtlety going on here, and I want to make sure that I'm not getting too punchy with every color and value change, that I'm keeping it all very subtle. And that will help give her face the right amount of softness. See here, like here's an example where I've gone too strong with the transition. So there's a darker values in her upper lip, and then there's a little bit of a transitional area, and then the start of her cheek. And here I just have a dark color, and then I have a light color. And so what I'm not getting is that very subtle rose color that's coming in right here. Maybe that's too dark. Let's adjust that. Okay, so it's like a light rosy color. And then I go into an even lighter color where there's that change in direction right here off the corner of her nose, and then it's kind of soft turn up into her cheek, and I still have that transition too strong, and we'll bring in a little bit more light underneath her nostril. So I'm really just making very minor steps in changes in value, but I have to be very deliberate about it, or the form won't look like it's turning in the right directions. Okay. I'm gonna get a little bit of, there's a lighter area here on her, just below her brow. This is the brow ridge as it's coming down, it's catching the light, and then as it gets towards the edges and closer to the eyelid, it's just going slightly darker. There's a lot of pink in there, and I'm not getting the pink because I haven't been keeping the paint clean enough. When I say clean, like a pink will have just some red and a lot of white, but if I start to get some other colors in there, then it does start to get a little bit gray. And but I do want it to be gray right here, even a little bit of green in there, which I haven't really mixed in any green yet. And then I'm going to adjust the shape to the edge of her face here. Okay. So I have some warmer colors too that I'm still missing. Pinks and light peachy colors. When I say peachy, I'm just meaning orange and white. Okay. And how's that looking? Missing some strong pinks in her eyeshadow up here. Just the shape is a little bit off. And the shape of her eyelid, just all these things, I just keep on adjusting them all through the painting to make sure that they start to feel right. I'll be doing the best I can with just the few amount of strokes to get it to begin with, but then I have to keep on adjusting it to get it to feel right. But if I can say it in just a few strokes, that's what I want, if I can, if it's possible. Oh, that was too much blue. I need to get almost a pure white as it comes down underneath the iris here. And then I don't want to lose the indication of the upper part of her lower lid. It is just a grayish purple mauve. There's lots of mauve-y kind of colors here. I want to make sure I get that. And then just a little bit of the white of her eye showing on the far side of her iris, but the rest is just the upper part of the lower lid there. And then I have to indicate where that edge of her lid is a little bit better, where the eyelashes are starting to protrude out here. Okay, I think that's pretty close. Just need a little bit of adjustment up here of the shape of her eyelid. Just comes up a little bit higher right there, and then drops down faster on this side. Okay, we're getting there. I don't know, didn't really mark when I started. I think it was close to an hour ago. Oh, I can look right here. It says I've been going for, my eyesight's pretty bad, but I think 53 minutes. I have reading glasses around here somewhere. It says, yes, 53 minutes, 55 seconds so far in this live stream. That's definitely the wrong color. Okay, should have mixed up just a big batch of pink before I started, and a big batch of mauve, and that would have helped. Okay, I do like the way this is looking. It's starting to look like a little bit like 1980s illustration work, which is appropriate because that's about when I graduated art school, the late 80s. Trying to get some of those green tones that are coming in to her along the shadow, along the jawline. And I want to get this darker shadow, again with a lot of red in it, along the edge of her jaw. And then I have to make her chin a little pointier, but maybe not that pointy. Okay. And I want to make sure that this edge is soft enough. There is a little bit slower turn than what I had there. And there's also some dark reds coming in. Okay. So that's starting to read a little bit. I just need to be a little bit more forceful with the darks and the shadow side here. And then that transition from the shadow is, I need to have it pretty slow here until it gets into her cheek for it to read properly. Okay, and I don't have the top part of her cheek quite white enough for this yet, and the direction quite right. But that's starting to get there. Starting to get there. Okay. It's starting to feel fleshy. It's starting to feel shiny where it's shiny. And I'm going to need to get up a lot lighter in her forehead. So if I look at the photo, this area up here is much lighter than down here. If you think of her whole head like a big egg, and the light is coming from a little bit from the upper right, it's hitting this area right here directly. This is the lightest part up here, and then then it drops down in value and temperature as it goes down. So this part will be warmer, and then it will drop off and get grayer and cooler as it goes down. And so I do need to get a little bit stronger, just a touch of orange, but mostly white, and keep on coming in lighter and lighter up here until I do get it, feel like it's light enough. And the same goes up here. The top parts of her cheeks are going to have kind of the same thing going on. They'll be lighter. See if I can get a little bit of the rosiness in her cheeks here. It's a little bit too orange, but it's a good start. Get a little bit of red in there. And then there's a transition down to that colder or cooler color. And I need to make the light of her eye just a little bit bigger there. And then that means that where I had her tear duct indicated is actually a little bit lower. Sure, I get enough orange in the paint there because it's got quite a bit of orange color in that shadow. So if I mix just orange and a couple dots of black, maybe just a little bit of red. When you mix black, this ivory black that I have with orange, it's the influence of the black on that orange is going to make it a little bit greener, and then I have to add just a little bit of red to balance that out so that I stay in that same orange value. Okay. All right. So, well, I kind of like it just like this. I think I'm just going to indicate just a little bit more hair, but I like, and I want to get rid of those lines that I had from the previous painting. But if I can just get her neck here, indicate her hand, and leave a lot of this open, I might do that because there's something just really nice going on just the way it is like that. I have a bad habit of over painting, and I'm trying to force myself to leave more things a little more open, as long as they read properly. So see if I can get the feeling of her hair coming in to her face without painting the whole her whole head, but just enough. And get the outside edge here, I think is going to be important. Okay. And the finger, this finger, it's important that I do kind of get it, not leave it so raw. It's a little bit better, but I have to clean it up just a little bit. I really do want to get her fingernail just right. So there's a shape in here. It's a little bit lighter. And it has all the stripes, the moon in here, and then the fingernail. And that fingernail, that's another place where you really are getting a light blue color. To pay attention that things aren't just white and next to one gray color next to another, or one shade of white and another shade of white. There's actually color in there. And it's important to change back and forth between warm and cool colors, values, where you see them, not just gray next to gray. Let's see if I can fix the shadow. Like I said before, the shadow really is defining the shapes here, though, helping to define the finger with very little actual value in the finger itself. Okay, we're getting there. Getting there. Okay, still have 4 happy people here, I hope. Happy that they gave away their weekend night to watch me do this. Hopefully you got like another device going with something streaming, and that you're not just only watching me do this. Because, I don't know, it seemed kind of a little bit boring, but yeah, if you're really intent on learning how to paint, watching people do it and talk about what they're doing is really helpful. That's sort of why I'm doing this. There's one major reason why, because started off doing lots of posts on Instagram and started asking people why they were following me, and for the majority of people it was because they wanted to learn how to paint, how to draw, how to paint, and liked what I was doing and wanted to know more. So that's one reason why I thought, well, hey, I could start putting videos of me painting on YouTube, and that way people could watch it. And then I started doing it live, and they not only could watch, but could ask me questions as I'm going along. So feel free to ask questions. I'm mixing up a little bit of yellow into the flesh tones here so that I can have a little bit more yellow in the part of her neck that we see that's sort of surrounded by hair. Has a little bit more yellow. I may have gone a little bit too far and want to pull it back so that it all feels like it relates to the face. but it does drop a little bit more yellow. And go keep on correcting the shape of that chin until I get it just right. And that far edge of her face I don't have quite right yet either. Almost have to draw through the finger to get the corresponding shapes on either side, like the, you know, the arrow going through the head kind of thing, so that things don't become disjointed. There's sort of this imaginary line that goes through the whole thing. And it's, you know, it's a very easy mistake to make. You see a form on one side and you paint it, and then you see a form on the other and you paint that, but you don't really look to see how those two pieces relate to each other. So it's really common to have crossed arms or crossed legs, and the upper part is in one place and the lower part is somewhere else. So it does help to pay attention to those things as you're working. Okay, again, there's a dark area here underneath the ear, and then the hair does get a little bit lighter as it comes out of the shadow. Get a little more color in that. Lighter, and then color. Okay, this is about where I want to let the hair drop off and sort of leave some to the imagination there. That's what's called vignetting. I'm going to create a little bit of a vignette where you're just seeing kind of her face come out of the white background of the board. And want to pull the hair. This is the last remaining lines that I have here from the previous drawing. So I want to make sure I wipe those out. And then I have indication of her hair coming down. Let me pull up this photo so I see what it's doing down here. So I can pull down get a little bit more of her skin showing between the hair and her neck, and pull the hair around that, I think is interesting enough. And again, a little bit of this purpley white mauve color for her hair in here. Have to go a little bit darker. This is maybe one place where I'm going to come right off the edge of the panel. In this case, I want to say canvas, but it's a panel. And so I was saying that these are Mona Lisa panels, and I put just one quick coat of gesso on it, and that's enough to give it some tooth and make it absorbent. I use Blick, in this case Blick brand gesso, and it has calc or something in it that makes it kind of chalky and gives it a little bit of a grit. Okay. I want her shoulder here just a little bit, because I just want some indication of where there's like the white of her shirt is, and I can get that if I'm very careful just by, I think I may have gone too far, but just by leaving a little bit of a void. I think I'm just a little bit too high there, but That's fine. I think that the idea is there. Okay, so I think with just, I want to complete the hand. I want to work out a little bit of the shadow around it. And then I'm going to come back, refine the face a little bit. But in terms of the hair, I think that's about all that I'm going to do here. Just maybe with her bangs, I want to get, there's some of the reflected lights that are coming across her hair. I want to resolve that a little bit. But this whole rest of the area, I'm just going to leave open. Because I think that's going to make, in the end, that's going to make a more interesting painting. That the um, the contrast between the finish, and I do have to finish her face a little bit more for that to work, but the openness and the unfinished part of the panel against the finished part of her face is will add interest. That contrast. But that means that I have to get the drawing of her hand right on. I probably should go in and try to measure some of these things, but when I say measure, go back to measuring on the computer monitor the distances and placement of certain things. But right now, as long as I have it close to the right placement and it looks somewhat right, then I'm not going to worry about it. It can be off a little bit and still read correctly. Just let trust in my drawing skills. Okay, so I have the top sides of her fingers have a little bit low. It has more of a half tone, and then I have these strong lights where it's really the light is hitting in its fullest right along here, and then it drops off a little bit into kind of a warmer half tone again. I almost want to call it a shadow, but it's like just a slight change of value and going a little bit redder. And that's going to help us really understand that the shape of the finger, where it has that subtle change in value, it's telling us that the form, where the form is turning. And I'm missing, there is actually a shadow, kind of orangey, on the back side of this finger here. Let's see if I can get it to read correctly. Just going to throw a little bit. This part of my ADHD jumping in is that I'll jump around to different parts of the face as I'm working, but I wanted to hit that reflected light here, highlight rather, just to feel a little bit more wetness of those lips. Gonna get a little bit, the separation of lips is sort of just almost a pure red right here. At least that alizarin permanent is a good color to use if you want a deep dark red. That is a more modern mixture of alizarin crimson. I use Gamblin paints for that. Their alizarin permanent is a more light phase version of that same color. It's a different color, chemical composition, but the idea is to be a reasonable facsimile for alizarin crimson. And so alizarin permanent, and it's really excellent for getting like dark separation between lips and creases and or tear ducts, things like that, that you really require a deep dark red with a fair amount of color. Trying to just indicate where the tops of her lower teeth are. There's a little bit of a bluer color that cuts in, which I assume is the her upper teeth. I don't really know what that is. I can't quite read it, but I don't have to be perfect when it comes to the teeth. In fact, it's for the most part, it's better to sort of just indicate sort of the mass general color of the teeth and let the the viewer's imagination do the rest. When you start getting and painting every little detail on the teeth, it starts to look really bad and doesn't read correctly. So just really try to keep the shapes and the colors and the details very simple. Sometimes you just want to put in a couple color changes and then come in where there is highlights in the teeth and then just call it a day. I do think I want to get the gum shape there at the base of her teeth, and that's have to make sure that I get that in the right place where it'll look like her whole face is off to one side. So again, if I inspect the color line, the center line here, it's coming down and then cuts back the in that center of her lip, comes back this way and then comes down again. And this separation from her teeth right here, that is the center line. Um, I think I have it over just a little bit too far. So if I look, it just comes right in. Actually, I don't have it in the wrong place. It looks pretty close to the right spot. What I do have is maybe her lower lip is sort of on the one side is not cutting in fast enough there. So I'm just correcting that a little bit. And those little corrections are really important. It makes a difference of a painting looking really wacky and feeling right. And so those little adjustments, it's important to keep on putting them in. There's a little bit of shadow there too on this side of the lip. Okay. I'm going to stop playing with that for now so I can finish off my hand. So that's where ADHD gets you. You're just you're painting one thing, and the next thing you know, you're painting somewhere completely different, and you never get back to that place where you were painting. Okay. So, still got a few of you here still. That's fine. Didn't expect a big audience because I didn't announce this. It's just important to me to record these when I do paintings now because it does give me material. If any of you have any experience making paintings, making videos for YouTube, it can be a very time-consuming process. But what's nice is when you shoot a live stream, it cuts the production time significantly because you have a little bit of time you need to set up the stream and a little bit of time at the end to optimize the video, but you're literally when you're done making the stream, your work is kind of done. You've made a video. It's the way it's going to be posted, and then people who see it later understand, yeah, this is a live video. It's not going to be perfect production quality. It sort of lowers the expectation about the quality of the video, and especially if it's kind of intimate. It's in this case you're kind of in between me and my painting here, and I'm telling you what I'm doing. That's You get very intimate view of what's going on, and that has a great deal of value. And you wouldn't get that same level of intimacy if I spent tens of hours pouring over the production, getting every detail perfect. You would lose that sense of intimacy. And so there's something that's really nice um, about doing these live streams. So I try to do them now. Every time that I paint, I'm trying to think about, well, whether I can do a live stream or not. Um, don't want to, again, I have to be careful I don't go overboard with painting this out, but I do want to get the feeling of the highlights in the hair here and the highlights up here, which means I need to get darker colors and values in here to get that to read properly. Okay, so I'm going to try to leave this open up here, and I'm going to do just exactly what I just did with the hair on the side as the hair on the top here. Okay, but I'm going to get to that later. I want to keep on moving on that hand. And we're 1 hour and 37. No, that's not right. Classes, please. We are 81 minutes and 47 seconds. So that is 1 hour, about 1 hour and 11 minutes into this. And so because I'm not going to paint the whole panel, it's not going to take me quite as long. So let's see if I can get this done by 12:15 Eastern time. So that's about 20 minutes from now. That's going to be a bit of a challenge, but I'm going to see if I can do it. I want to be making these videos shorter, and the only way that I can do it is paint faster or end before I'm finished, but I'd rather just paint faster. Okay. And, get enough green on the brush here, and do get a little bit more, adjust that shape a little bit. It's more like yellow. There's a little bit of something orange or yellow in there. That's just an after shadow. I don't know if that's the right term, but it's sort of like where the light source is either soft or there's additional light sources coming from the same direction, then you have something that looks like still a shadow but not quite as pronounced. That's what I'm trying to get right there. And then the softness of the turn of her cheek here. Soft. So blend that a little bit just to get the softness of that transition. But I want the chin to read as a form that's in front of her jawline. So almost trying to treat those two things as separate forms. There is a little bit of lighter color and value here. So chin is one form. It has a front here, which I'm going to paint lighter. And then it turns back. And then the jawline, a separate form, and it has a little bit more shadow. That's grayish along the side here. And it gets a little bit darker as it gets towards the jawline. So it is a common mistake. I don't know if it's really a mistake, but it's an opportunity to help describe the form And to just make this sort of one big swoopy curvy line, and what you're missing is that they're separate forms that are kind of meeting together, ones that are in front of other ones. When you lose that opportunity, then um, it doesn't quite feel like what what is happening in the reference image. Really struggling for that word, for the inside the reference. Make sure I get that warm reflected light in there to really get the sense that there's a side here, and it's very narrow, but that's really tells us how quickly the form is turning. So I want to make sure that I keep on coming in with the lights into here and making that area right there very narrow. Okay, so that's is starting to read. I also want to make sure that the chin is reading in front of the neck. Let me get a little more lights in here. Okay, and just adjust the shape of the chin a little bit. Okay. All right. I just one more. Good. Okay. Now back to the hand. The hand is um, really does require slowing down and seeing where the pieces all come together. And it's one of the hardest things to paint. It's one you see in lots of portraits where people are sticking their hands in their pockets or something like that, or having them curled away so that the portrait painter doesn't have to deal. And but when a hand is done well, it really does lift everything up. But then again, there's nothing worse than seeing a portrait where the hands are so clumsily done that it just kills the whole thing. So I'm trying not to have that happen. Okay, so there's lots of places where I need to do a bit of correcting, like in this finger here. Again, here's a form that's in front. Don't have the highlight in the right place, so that form isn't reading correctly. And I don't have this part of the silhouette right. Really going to have to work back and forth. It really is getting each digit of, not each digit, each segment of the finger to get it right before it will start to look right. And I'm not even close right now. So until I refine those forms a little bit, it's going to look pretty bad. And it may be a part of the painting that I do offline so that I can take a little more time with it. Would love to get these paintings done quicker, but sometimes that would mean that I'm not spending the proper amount of time to get some of these things to look right. Okay, so I am going to keep on going with the hand. Going to try to get the pinky in here in the right place. Just pull this up so I can get to it. So I am going to draw the shadow. That's really, it's the hair and the shoulder and some of the shadow that's on the front part of her shirt or blouse, whatever, is reading pretty dark. I think I'm coming too high with that. But then it's describing the silhouette of the pinky and that second finger, and then her index finger there. not her index finger, her middle finger, sorry. Had too many fingers. Okay, and then I came too high up to that shadow, so I'm going to have to work on knocking that back, even though it is a lot of black that I just put down. Okay, trying to get the values right in that finger. So looks like I may be not coming out too far with that, so I have to cut it back just a little bit. Yep, something like that. Then the shadow would be more like that. And then I have to overcome that black here. Okay. That's now that I've gotten a little more information in there, I can see where I'm off with parts of the drawing. And it's going to take a fair amount of back and forth and correcting. So I am going to do some of this offline, and I'm going to see if I can resolve some of the forms in her face, and do that part live. Okay, let's see. I am so right now what I want to do is really compare back and forth between the photo and the painting that I have and see where it's significantly off, and then go ahead and make revisions to it, just little subtle changes. Have that shadow from her finger, that's a little bit too big, or that her finger isn't coming out far enough. I think that's actually the case. If I look at where her fingernail is, that it's actually a little bit up over here. That's looking a little bit better. So a lot of painting is just comparing um, from the reference. If you're working from a live model, comparing to the painting to the live model, or a photo, comparing to the photo, assuming that you want to capture the details close to what is in the photo, and then you look back and forth until you can see where the differences are, where things are a little bit off, and then work to correct those things. I mean, it sounds like somewhat of a no-brainer, obvious process, but that's really what it involves, and I don't think a lot of people, not everyone thinks in those terms of a painting just being one long adjustment process, but that's kind of how it works generally. Is that you put something down, you make your best guesses to try to get close, and then over time you're just adjusting it until you get closer and closer to what it needs to be for the finish. Now, some people may have more of a straight to it process. I don't know quite how you do it. I think you have to spend a lot of time either tracing or on the drawing to get it just so, and then you can be fairly exacting about the placement of the paint, but you still have to do quite a bit of adjusting to the values and the colors to get it right. I think there's a misperception in that, like, painters like Sargent and Sorolla, well, maybe it's true with Sorolla, but that just painted it just perfect the first time, like just knew what it was going to be, just pulled out a brush, painted it down and walked away. And it is not. I know from written accounts of John Singer Sargent working how many times he would rework and rework the same area until he got it he got it the way he wanted it to look. And it took quite a bit of time to get there. There's accounts from some sitters saying they came as many as 80 times to sit um, for a portrait that Sargent was working on. And then even after those 80 times, he would just take the whole thing and put just slice up the canvas, because he knew he wasn't going to get to where he wanted on that piece of canvas, only to start again. And usually this was horrifying to the sitter to know that they had sat so many times for so long, over such a long period of time, and then Sargent just comes and destroys the canvas. And but the fact of the matter is that once he had done that, he had kind of memorized everything that he needed to do to get the finished painting, and so then would work very quickly after that. But just the thought that you would sat for several months for a painting, and thinking that it must be close to completion, and then the artist uh, just destroys the canvas. It must be just horrifying. And but that's what he would do. That was, he needed to get what he wanted, get what he was after. He would have to start again. And usually, again, according to accounts, that he would um, that he, after each sitting of the day, he would take the the work that he had done and just wipe it down, almost like blur it out in a sense, because he wanted it fresh, a fresh start each time he came to it. And he knew that to do that he needed to knock down all of the brushwork to get to kind of a blurred out version of the whole thing. So if anyone saw his work at the end of the day and wondered how it was going, they would probably see just a blurry mess um, that was left, no evidence of being close to any kind of finish. And so that when he came in fresh, he could go into kind of an attack mode to try to get back, um, sort of as each previous sitting was kind of like a dress rehearsal for the next day. And then again, if he didn't get it, if he wasn't satisfied with what he got to, then he would do the same thing again the next day, is wipe it all down. And there would be evidence of the the paint left there of where things were. There would just be no detail, and that it was up to him to come in with the finishing strokes just the way he wanted it to look. And so what I was saying is, there is that misperception that, you just come to it and you paint a perfect painting, um, when if you're a master, you just sit down and three strokes and it's this all looks perfect, and it's wasn't really that way. Okay, so I keep on working in here. I get this area here lighter. Okay, and I'm gonna clean up again. Here's one of those transitional areas where I just have too strong a transition between the light and the dark, and then so I'm just going to really soften that up, and then really come in much higher into the eyelid, because there's just a thin stretch where the eyelashes are, and just slightly darker color on the underside of the eyelid there. And then there's a little bit darker on the top part of this form, um, sort of the hollow of the eye here. It's just a little bit of a darker shape, and then the underside of the eyelid is just ever so much darker, not as dark as I painted it. So getting those values right, and I'm trying to be even better at it, is just um, the right values in the right place, and that really starts to feel, will start to feel even fleshier than I've been able to do it in the past. Just a little bit more modeling. I don't want to lose the freshness of the brushwork, but I do want to get those kind of softer effects that oil paint allows me to do without getting overly blendy. I'm just paying attention to where those some of those transitions are too hard and trying to get them right. I'm coming in with a little bit of green right here because that transition does have just a touch of green in it, and then I'm trying to get the shape of the hair as it moves along the face right there. Really, like what I said before, is that against the unfinishedness of the outside edges of her hair and face, I really need the face itself to feel fairly polished, fairly finished. And I think it is having a good feel right now. I don't want it to be overly rendered either. I want it to feel, I want you to feel the brushwork, which I think it's pretty close to doing right now. Some of these areas in here are feeling very nice. Want to get a little, little dashes of green that are in here and adjust those where the lights and darks are here. And I have a little bit of lights creeping in right here. Unless I paint them in there, they're not going to get there by themselves. I used to have to say to myself, if I wanted something in the painting, I actually had to paint it. I sort of had this kind of magical thinking, if I just, paint around things and sort of paint things in and sort of pay attention, that they would just somehow magically show up just the way I wanted it to. And it's like, no, I actually have to stop and think about it and paint it if I wanted it to be there. Okay, I'm going to come in with a little bit of, a little bit of lighter lights in here. Just this um, folds underneath the eye. It's catching the light. And just want to get that in there. And then there's again, a little bit lighter lights, highlights, maybe a little bit of moistness from just a little bit of sweat on her cheek. And I want to get the feeling of that. Just lost a little bit of that shadow there, and I want to come back with strong reds, try to get that. And also, I want a little bit of pink on the flare of her nostril there, because that's what I'm seeing in the photo. And soften up this right here. Okay. So what I'm missing is a little bit of core shadow right here. That's going to help us feel that reflected light, and then the half tone, just a touch of yellow in that too. And I think I'm missing a little bit of that shadow shape here, just coming up. This is a quiet crowd tonight, but that's okay. Just gonna keep on working. And, I thought I painted a highlight in that eye. I guess I hadn't gotten to it yet. I will carve a little bit more into that iris, and then I'm going to give you the highlight in the iris right there. there's something still a little bit off about that iris, but I think so. Typically, when you have a light source that's um, above eye level, that's sort of typical. Lights tend to be up a little bit higher unless you have underlighting. Um, but when you do, the light passes through the iris like it's a lens, and then if you can think about it, almost like a concave shape on like on the far side of that lens, and that's where the light is being caught. The light is passing through and hitting. If it's coming from above, then it's hitting almost like a dish, like a bowl. It's hitting strongest on the lower part there. And so I want to pay attention to that to make sure that there is sufficiently lighter color and value on the lower part of her eyes, of her irises. And that will help give that feeling of the light passing through. Feel like it's actually, a lot of painters will exaggerate that, and that's not such a bad thing. Um, but it gets a little cutesy if you go too far. So I try to keep it keep it real. I always want to make sure that I get a little bit of that shadow that's cast from the eyelid onto the eye, and that will help separate them in space a little bit. That will make the ball, the eyeball, feel like it's recessed back slightly, because it is. And having that little cast shadow really does help. That drop shadow, whatever you want to call it. I guess it's called drop shadow in graphic design, but it's the same idea. Okay, I am missing the highlights on the philtrum here. And I do have a little bit of a darker shape there, but it's just too strong a value difference to really lighten it up. Okay, that's feeling a little bit better. Pull that lower ridge, the bottom of her nostril, down a little bit. Okay, I think I went a little too far there, but that's okay. Gotta cut back a little bit the other way. Okay. Okay. I'm trying to burn a file right now that's a demo that I had done last week, and the live version, the sound quality wasn't very good, so I tried to I'm trying to um, reproduce it with the sound volume pumped up higher, and some of the video itself improved, and so but it's taking about 24 hours for it to render, and then right now it's telling me that the disk is full as it's getting towards the end of the rendering, so I may have to cut this early so I can try to throw some things in the trash so there's enough room for it to finish doing its job. But we'll see. I try to see how much space I actually have left on the disk. It says I have 1 gigabyte left, but that isn't always accurate. Okay, let's see how far I am on this render though. And Okay, well it says it's very close to being finished because it says it's 100%. So let's see if it manages to finish doing its job. I will go ahead and hide that if I can. Hide. Okay, so we're back to the beautiful Ellie Luna here, and she has some really strong oranges, reddish oranges in her creases of her eyelids. And I want to see if I can get some of that. Really punch up that color that's there. Same here. And then again, softening up transitions here where I have it way too jumpy. And then I'm missing some of the lighter value here in the brow ridge. So there's some areas that are actually starting to feel like the actual flesh that I'm painting on the flesh, which is what I want. Just have to keep on coming in with thicker and thicker paint until I get the values that I want. Okay. This is cutting up a little bit higher here. I have to be careful as I start to get a little bit tired and comfortable, the volume of my voice really drops. So I have to make sure that I am keeping the volume up so that people can hear me in the video, especially as it gets made into an on-demand video, and then people will play it, and then they have to turn their volume way up to be able to hear what I'm saying. Now I'm very close to the base of the phone where the microphone is, and I took my phone cover off because I found that that does a fair job of covering over the speaker holes and hurts the recording volume. And but at some point I may try to figure out a little bit better setup. Part of the problem is that the where you would plug in a microphone into the phone is the same place where you would plug the phone charger in, and I don't want to run out of charge in the middle of these, so I have to keep it plugged in. So, but that doesn't really give me an easy way of hooking up a microphone to the phone itself. Okay, let's see if I can soften up that. Let me put in the nose ring, and then I might and a little bit of this other jewelry here. She has a tiny, I don't know if it's one of those earplugs or just an earring there, but I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Girl with the, I'm going to call the painting Girl with the pearl earplug after Vermeer. Okay. So punch a little, just add a little bit of red and some black into the shadow, and improve the nostril shape, and then I'm going to go in and put in the nose ring. Yep, that's still, don't have something quite right here where the base of this nose is. Something like that. Okay. That, and then I want to fix the other side of her nose too, especially since I want it right, to get it right before I really indicate where that nose ring is. Okay, nose ring. Nose ring, nose ring. We'll still have to do a couple things first. Okay, now I think I can put it in. I'm pretty confident where it's going to be. So it's metallic. To get something to look metallic, you need a fair amount of contrast between light and dark. So I'm going to come in with black, essentially, as my dark. Put it in. Put in just indicate the shape of it. I can need to correct that a little bit. So I came in maybe a little bit too low. And a little bit of the wrong angle here. Okay. So I'm going to give another hit of shadow or black. I think that's probably enough. Okay, let's adjust it just a little bit. And then after that, I'm going to come in with pure white or yellow, depending on the type of metal. But in this case, it's sort of silvery, so it's going to be white. And I am going to put in whites where the highlight is from the light source. It's a little bit too much white. Okay, so just on the edge of this flat, I'm putting enough white on the brush that I can just do a little bit of a stroke across the form of that. This gives me the most control. I can go along the form, but with this amount of contrast and such a small shape, I can just really get a lot of control just doing a little tap of white across the form. And this brush is a little bit beat up. If I have another new one lying around, I'll pull it out. I don't see one that's in better shape, but I think I'm doing an okay job here. And have a little bit of dark. So I think I smeared it somewhere with a brush stroke here too, so I may have to clean up a little bit. Okay, and then coming back in again with the highlight, just pure white paint. Okay, so that's reading. Whether it's in the right place or not is debatable, and I can still make some adjustments to it by painting the shadow that's behind it and just carving in a little bit, but that's essentially it. That's giving it that metallic feel. Okay, and missing one little piece here. The reflected light that goes up, the highlight that goes up into the nostril, so it really does feel like it is just going right into the nose there. Carving that a little bit, and so that's it. So is there anything? Just gonna do a little bit of more work on on the eyeballs here, on the whites of her eyes, and then I am going to call it a night, and then I will do a little bit of the finer touches in the morning, but this is all essentially what I'm going to do tonight, and it gives you guys a pretty good idea of how I worked on most of the painting. I'm going to spend a fair amount of time on the fingers tomorrow and finish off, get little subtleties right in the face, and then, but I think it's overall the face is looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the way it is right now. I just want to clean up the hair a little bit here, finish off the hand, and that get a little bit better sense of the hair in here, maybe clean up the shoulder, and then that'll be it. Okay, so thank you all for tuning in tonight and joining. Please leave a comment, give me a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please do, and hit the notification bell to get notifications the next time that I have a live video or I post a tutorial. And I wish you a happy, I guess it's, for me, it's now Sunday, but have a happy rest of the weekend. So have a good night.